Welcome back to Legally Speaking. And today on Legally Speaking, we're discussing a topic that's tough but necessary: how to prepare for jail. I'm Melanie van Orde, and with me is counsel Dawn Quelch. If you or someone close to you is facing a sentence, this video will help you get informed, organized, and emotionally prepared for what's ahead. Hi, Dawn.
Hi, Mel. Good to see you. I wish we were talking about a happier topic. Unfortunately, going to jail is something that sometimes happens at the end of the criminal process, and it's very important that we're able to provide a bit of information on this topic.
Very important because it doesn't seem like there's a lot of information out there.
Well, it's not something that anybody really ever wants to talk about, and there aren't any really hard and fast rules. However, it's important to know that because lawyers often engage with the jails, we have a lot more experience and understanding of what you're likely to face, even though we've never been in there ourselves, and can give you a bit of reassurance and guidance. Like I said, there aren't hard and fast rules, but there are a couple of things that you should perhaps maybe take a thought about before you end up having to go into custody.
So, Dawn, let's get into this. When someone is convicted and facing a jail sentence, what are the very first things that they should prepare for?
Well, there's the reality that you're going to go into the physical custody of a police officer. And one of the first things that's going to happen is you're going to be searched. So, I mean, this may seem very basic, but make sure there's nothing in your pockets that you wouldn't want a police officer to find. You'd be surprised, especially those who suffer from addictions or engage in daily behaviors that involve carrying weapons. People sometimes forget what they have in their coat pocket, and it can result in an additional charge or additional problems as you're going into custody. The next thing to take to have a thought about is what's going to happen with your day-to-day management of your affairs while you are serving your sentence. You may want to discuss the possibility of having a power of attorney drafted with a trusted family member or business associate. You should speak to your lawyer about what would be involved in that. That would allow someone to pay your bills, speak to your bank on your behalf, even sometimes make deposits into your canteen account for you, especially if you own property or have ongoing obligations. You may want to take some steps to make sure that those on the outside who want to help you are legally able to, and that can involve drafting such documents.
And what are the most common misconceptions that clients have about going to jail?
So, a lot of our understanding of what it's like inside of a carceral facility, and that's a fancy word that means both prison and jail. It's where you're being held in custody. A lot of how we view that comes from television. And it's important to remember that movies and TV shows are meant to be entertainment. And so, some of the more salacious or interesting aspects of custody tend to be hyped up a little bit. I'm not going to suggest that jail or prison is, as safe as an elementary school, but there is less violence in our facilities than I think one might expect coming from popular culture references. One of the most important things, though, to understand is that trouble finds those that look for it. And so, a big part of the advice about going into a custodial situation is to kind of keep your eyes on your own page and stay in your own lane. You're going to make friends, you're going to have cellmates, there's going to be conversations, but it's a good idea to steer clear of what brought you into custody, and also to make sure that you have a believable version that if you are pressed by another inmate, that you're able to talk to them about. Each circumstance is very different, and so if you believe that you may be going into custody, talk to your lawyer and ask them for advice as to how you should handle what happens if you get asked, well, what are you convicted for? What are you doing time for? There are certain offenses that carry more stigma within an institution than others, and not just from other inmates. In terms of being, certain offenses can also cause different types of scrutiny from correctional officers. For example, if you're indicated to be involved in the drug trade or potentially have an affiliation with either a gang or organized crime, it may be a good idea to not affiliate yourself inside the institution with people who perhaps have tattoos from those organizations or perhaps are known to be engaged in that behavior. You will be watched. They will take notes, and especially if you're going to the penitentiary, for example, can have a real impact on whether or not you get parole.
What is the intake process like when someone first arrives at a correctional facility?
Okay, so there's a slight difference if you're going into a provincial jail or a federal penitentiary. So, provincial jails are for sentences that are less than 2 years less a day, or while you are on pretrial detention. So, for example, if you're denied bail or while you're waiting to put together a bail plan, you would likely be held in a provincial facility. Upon arrest, an individual is taken to a police station. And depending on what time of day that happens, that's likely where you're going to be held until bail court. If after bail court you are not released, you will be transferred to a detention center. And that can be anywhere from just down the street from the courthouse to a couple of hours away. And these facilities tend to have individuals from all walks of life and many different jurisdictions. Upon arrival, you're going to be searched. You're likely to be interviewed and you may undergo some medical screening. It's important that if part of the case against you involves a medical issue, that you seek some advice from your lawyer before you go into that situation. So in those cases, I'm thinking if you're accused of faking an illness, if you're accused of having concealed the delivery of a child, or if those types of offenses, you're going to want to make sure to flag that and get some advice from your counsel before you engage in answering any of the questions at the institution. It's important to note that anytime you're talking to somebody who works at the jail, you have a diminished expectation of privacy. So it's important that if you think any of those things may have some bearing on outstanding charges, or if you're on pretrial detention, that you seek that advice for your particular circumstances from your own attorney.
What access do people have to healthcare, legal advice, or rehabilitation programs while they're in custody?
So again, still staying in the provincial system, in terms of access to legal services, lawyers are able to make appointments to speak with their clients either in person or via Zoom. And by phone as well. It can be difficult to get to a phone. So, if you are able to have someone on the outside who's authorized to convey messages to your counsel, that can sometimes be very beneficial. And you'd have to have those individuals sign some forms, or you'd have to sign some forms with your lawyer to allow for that communication to occur. In terms of healthcare, every detention center has nurses, there's an institutional doctor, and usually there's a mental health professional or two that work there as well. It's meant to provide emergency first aid and regular care. There are some individuals who are in these facilities for 2 years, for example, and so those facilities are able to address concerns such as diabetes, chronic heart conditions, those types of medical issues. Now, for traumatic injuries, so broken bones and things like that, inmates and prisoners are often transferred out to local hospitals or clinics. One of the more important things to canvass with your lawyer, if applicable to you, is that the types of medications that a jail is prepared to administer is limited to the formulary. And so if you are dependent on a medication, say for a disease like epilepsy or something along those lines, you're going to want to ensure that the drug that you have been prescribed by your doctor is offered on the formulary, or that you have spoken to either your doctor or your pharmacist about what an appropriate substitution would be while you're in custody. I note this is a particular concern when it comes to certain medications, particularly for things like ADHD, because those drugs are actually controlled substances, and different facilities have different rules for what they're willing to offer. I talked about intake for provincial jail. At the federal level, it's slightly different. Quite often, a federal penitentiary sentence can be imposed while the person has already been in custody. It's less common for someone to go from the street straight into the penitentiary, but it does sometimes happen. Again, at the front end, you're going to be searched upon coming into custody. If you've been in a provincial detention center or on the street, you're likely to go back to a provincial detention center for the first few days. If you know that you are going to be serving your sentence in a penitentiary, you can ask for a waiver of transport. And that's a form that you sign that basically gets rid of the waiting period. Sometimes, if you're planning on appealing your sentence, your lawyer can file paperwork to keep you at the provincial level rather than going into the penitentiary. Once you have been transferred into the federal system, Correctional Service of Canada has an assessment unit where you'll spend the first 6 to 8 weeks of your sentence there. You're going to meet with different corrections professionals, medical professionals, and individuals who administer certain tests and questionnaires with you in order to determine what your correctional plan is going to look like. So that would be what programming you're going to take, and more importantly, what your security classification is going to be and where your home institution is going to be. Here locally, the Joyceville Assessment Unit, just east of Kingston, is where most federally sentenced offenders go for their assessment. There are some exceptions to that. And then once that assessment period is completed, you'll be transferred to your home institution.
Thank you so much, Dawn. What final piece of advice would you give someone who is anxious or fearful about serving a sentence?
There isn't a lot that anyone can say. This is a very difficult point in anyone's life. I would encourage them to not dwell on it too much. Worrying about it isn't going to stop it from happening. One of the things that I often recommend to clients who have longstanding systemic addictions is that they make all efforts possible before going into custody to address that addiction. If you are dependent on a substance that is illegal, it can make your serving your sentence very, very difficult, and you can incur heavy debts and additional charges. I would also suggest that if there are any tattoos or markings on your body that might be problematic, that you may want to address those as well. And I'm talking about things that may indicate a gang affiliation or a racial bias that can often cause a lot of problems in the institution.
Thank you so much, Dawn, for joining us today. And thank you to everyone else. As you can see, preparing for jail can make a difficult situation more manageable and less frightening. Taking steps early helps to protect your rights and maintain stability. If you need help navigating this transition, don't hesitate to reach out. Subscribe for more videos, and thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in to Legally Speaking, proudly brought to you by Aitken Robertson Criminal Defence. We represent clients facing criminal charges all over Ontario, providing you with legal support and dedicated advocacy. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see more content, please like and subscribe to our channel. For more information, visit our website. We also offer free books on various types of criminal charges, which you can request on our website or by using the QR codes on your screen now. For legal assistance, call us today or visit our website to request a meeting with one of our experienced lawyers or licensed paralegals. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Legally Speaking.